The crystalline halls of the Zarketh Imperial Palace rang with laughter, but it was not the kind that brought warmth. Princess Ilera stood in the center of the grand courtyard, her forearms crossed in elegant disdain, her violet skin shimmering under the twin suns. Around her, a dozen noble courtiers from across the galaxy had gathered, their alien faces twisted in barely concealed mockery. At the edge of the circle stood Prince Consort Adrian Vale, his simple brown robes a stark contrast to the ornate armor and flowing silks of those around him. His dark hair was tied back, revealing calm gray eyes that betrayed nothing. He held a leather-bound book in one hand, his fingers marking a page he had been reading before the spectacle began. "Tell us again, Princess," drawled Lord Creveth, a reptilian noble whose scales glittered like emeralds. "How did your mother, the great Queen Celestara, come to accept this human as your consort?" Zalera's golden eyes flashed with something between shame and defiance. "It was a diplomatic arrangement," she said coolly. "The humans wished for an alliance. My mother saw potential in their primitive weapons technology." "Primitive?" Another courtier laughed. "They still use projectile weapons. Kinetic firearms when we have mastered plasma and antimatter." Adrian turned a page in his book, apparently unbothered. "Does he even speak?" Creveth stepped closer, his clawed feet clicking on the polished floor. "Or did they send us a mute scholar to represent their species?" "He speaks when there is something worth saying," Zalera replied, but her voice carried an edge of irritation. She had argued against this marriage for months, raging at her mother that humanity was beneath them, that Earth was a backwater world of savage primates who had barely achieved interstellar travel. But Queen Celestara had been adamant. The alliance would stand. What Zalera hadn't told the court, what she had barely admitted to herself, was that Adrian Vale unnerved her. In the 3 months since their union, he had been unfailingly polite, brilliant in his diplomatic work, and utterly unreadable. He spent his days in the library, his evenings in meditation, and his nights sleeping in a separate chamber at his own request. He never challenged her, never argued, never showed any emotion beyond mild interest. It drove her mad. "Perhaps," Creveth continued, emboldened by the crowd's laughter, "we should test this human's worth. After all, among the Zarketh, a consort must prove themselves in combat. It is tradition." Zalera's breath caught. This was dangerous territory. "Lord Creveth, my husband is a scholar, not a warrior." "Then he is no fit consort for a warrior princess," Creveth interrupted. He drew his ceremonial blade, a curved weapon that hummed with contained energy. "I challenge the human to first blood. Surely he can manage that much, or shall we dissolve this farce of a marriage now?" The courtyard fell silent. All eyes turned to Adrian Vale. He closed his book carefully, setting it on a nearby bench. When he looked up, his expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had sharpened. "Lord Creveth," he said quietly, his voice carrying despite its softness, "I have no wish to embarrass you." The reptilian noble's scales flushed dark with rage. "You dare. However," Adrian continued, "if you insist on this course of action, I will accept your challenge. But know that I choose the terms. Ancient blades only. No energy weapons, no enhancements, no armor beyond what we wear now." Creveth laughed, a hissing sound. "Agreed. I shall enjoy carving my initials into your soft human flesh." Zalera moved to intervene, but her handmaiden caught her arm, whispering urgently. Protocol demanded she not interfere in an honor challenge once accepted. Her hearts pounded in her chest. What was Adrian thinking? A weapons master brought forth a selection of traditional blades. Creveth selected a long sword, testing its weight with professional ease. Adrian studied the options for a long moment before choosing what appeared to be a simple longsword, unadorned and plain. They moved to the center of the courtyard. Creveth fell into a fighting stance, his blade held high. Adrian simply stood, the sword point down, both hands resting on the pommel. "Defend yourself, human!" Creveth lunged forward with blinding speed. What happened next would be debated in the Imperial Court for years to come. Adrian moved, not with the fumbling desperation of a scholar thrust into combat, but with the fluid grace of water finding its path. His blade came up in a perfect arc, deflecting Creveth's strike with minimal effort. The reptilian noble stumbled, surprised by the precise counter. He attacked again, faster, more vicious. Adrian's blade met each strike, turning them aside with an economy of motion that seemed almost lazy. But Zalera, trained in combat since childhood, recognized what she was seeing. This was not luck. This was mastery. "Who are you?" she whispered. Krevath, now furious, abandoned technique for raw aggression, his blade a blur of deadly intent. Adrian moved like smoke through his attacks, his own sword singing a deadly song. Then, in a movement too fast to follow, he stepped inside Krevath's guard. The courtyard gasped. Adrian's blade rested against the reptilian's throat, exactly where scales met softer flesh. First blood. The challenge was won, but Adrian hadn't drawn blood. "Yield," he said softly. Krevath's eyes were wide with terror. I yield." Adrian stepped back, lowering his blade. He bowed formally to his opponent, then to the assembled court. "My apologies for the deception," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. "I am Adrian Vale, formerly captain of the Terran Rangers, retired after the Andrax campaign. I came here as a scholar, because that is what I have chosen to become. But make no mistake, humanity has not forgotten how to wage war. We simply prefer not to." He turned to Zalera, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes beyond calm neutrality. There was sorrow there and ancient weariness. "Princess, I apologize if my silence has caused you shame. I thought you preferred it that way." Zalera found herself unable to speak. The Andrax campaign. She had read about it, dismissed it as human propaganda, an entire battle fleet destroyed by a single human strike force. She had thought it impossible exaggeration. Looking at her husband now, she realized she had been wrong about everything. Adrian retrieved his book and bowed once more to the silent court before walking calmly away, leaving behind a gathering of shocked nobles and one princess whose world had just been turned upside down. That evening, Zalera found him in the library, reading by candlelight. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Adrian looked up, a slight smile touching his lips. "You never asked." For the first time since their marriage, Zalera sat down beside him. "Tell me now," she said quietly. "Tell me everything." And as the twin moons rose over the Zarketh homeworld, Adrian Vale began to speak, and his wife finally began to listen.